Good morning, friends. Let's see how many charts we can code today. This is Precious. Hello friends, this is Precious and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to do code along with me. We are going to code some charts and let's see how many charts can we code and how long my battery will last. All right, so here we have syncope, carcinoma of breast cancer, carcinoma of breast, metastatic to bone, depression, osteoarthritis, hypertension, AFib, and GERD. So we have a lot to code here. So in my current project, we can code more than my previous project. Okay, so the first one is hypertension. The code for that is I-10. Next, we have persistent atrial fibrillation. To index that, you say fibrillation, atrial, and then persistent. So the code for that is I-4819. We also have GERD, but GERD does not risk adjust anymore. We have depression, that is F32.A. Then we also have carcinoma of breast, metastatic to bone. Let's go to our table of neoplasm, but we have to let's make sure that even if it is in the assessment, let's make sure that this cancer is active. Okay, so it is in the assessment. Let's see if there is an eradication documented. There is already. This is status post mastectomy. All right. Okay, so we do not need to code the breast cancer, but I believe we are going to code the bone metastasis, because metastatic cancer are chronic and there is no indication that the metastatic cancer was eradicated. Okay, so let's bone secondary, and that the code for that is C79.51. and I think that's it for this encounter. All right, we are now onto our next chart. Let's make sure that the patient's name match to the chart, and they are matched. Let's start. The patient has cellulitis. The patient has history of DVT, and we also have osteoarthritis. What else can we find here? Those things only what we find here. Can look for more. I guess that's it. There's really nothing. There's no conditions here that risk adjust. If you want to find, if you want to do right leg cellulitis, you just type cellulitis and then type the specificity or the location, which is leg, cellulitis, and then lower limb, and then the laterality, but the code is the code does not risk adjust, so there's nothing to code on this section right here. And yep, that's it. There's nothing to code here. Let's move on to the next encounter, which let's go to the assessment. Again, this assessment has right leg cellulitis, and there is an evidence of chronic venous insufficiency. We can code that. I mean, we can try to index that insufficiency venous, and the code for that is I87.2, which does not risk adjust. The patient also has history of DVT, and that is a history, so historical. And I don't think it is an acute condition. We are doing hospital now, and there's nothing to go right here. So that's it. Let's move on to the next encounter. Let's look for some conditions in this chart that risk adjust. So far, there's none. You might want to look at the medication list because there are sometimes some conditions there that are, you know, hidden. So far, there's nothing. Let's look at the vitals. If there's something we can code there, there's nothing. Assessment is the same: cellulitis, venous insufficiency, osteoarthritis, history of DVT. There's really nothing, so we can move on to the next encounter. Okay, we are here, and they are the same conditions which do not risk adjust. So we just move on to the next encounter. Okay, we have here cellulitis. Oh, now we found a condition. So we found that the patient has diabetes, and for diabetes, the default code for diabetes type 2, the code for that is E11.9. Let's look for more. And the patient also has medical history of hypertension, hyperlipidemia, and COPD. So COPD is J44.9, hypertension is I10, and what do you call that? Hyperlipidemia E78.5. Let's look for supports for those medical conditions because they're listed under medical history, so we need support to report that. I don't see any support. Let's look for more. Let's read more. Yep, there's no support. I guess that's it. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so here in this, the patient has diabetes, that is E11.9. The patient has rhabdomyolysis. Let's see if that risk adjusts. The code is M6282, which does not risk adjust. Weakness, difficulty walking, nope. In this encounter, we only found one condition that is reportable, and that is E11.9. Okay, let's continue. In the assessment, we have cellulitis, DVT, osteoarthritis. Those do not risk adjust. Let's go back and find other conditions. This is in the hospital, and there is insulin, so, and it does not specify here that this is outpatient meds. It just says active meds, so I'll take that as a hospital medication, and I will not code the insulin. Yep, there's no reportable condition here. Let's move on to the next one. Okay. Let's move to the assessment. Cellulitis, and we have diabetes. We have, that's diabetes in the assessment. Okay, the patient also has hypertension, and it is codable I-10. The patient also has COPD, but is not on home oxygen. But there is a condition of COPD, which is J44.9. We can report that. Also, the patient has hyperlipidemia, but let's find, since it is in the past medical history, let's look for a home medication for that. Yes, it is supported by a statin. Okay, so in this chart, we have diabetes, hypertension, COPD, and hyperlipidemia. I guess that's it. Let's see if we have another one. Okay, we have another encounter. So in this one, it says that the patient is morbidly obese, and the code for that is E66.01. The patient also has diabetes. Let's go first to the assessment. Okay. There's nothing to report from the assessment, but from the subjective part of the encounter, there are a lot. There are some. So we can code here diabetes, also COPD, also hypertension, and also hyperlipidemia. So we have 5 conditions: morbid obesity, diabetes, COPD, hypertension, and hyperlipidemia. Do we have more? And that's it. All right, let's move on now. I think this is our third chart, right? Is this our third chart? Let's see. Okay, let's look for our first encounter. Let's see what are the conditions we can report here. Let's go to the assessment. We have HIV, and it is confirmed, so we can do B20. Also, the patient has hypertension, the patient has hyperlipidemia, and that's it. We have 3 conditions in this encounter. Now let's move on to the next encounter. Let's go to the assessment. So the patient has HIV, B20. The patient has hypertension, I-10. The patient has hyperlipidemia, E78.5. The patient has suspected small bowel obstruction. We do not code that one because it is not confirmed, and it's also stated here it is unlikely, so we do not report that. And that's it. We have 3 conditions. Let's proceed to the next one. So in this encounter, there's a consult for small bowel obstruction, but in the assessment it says no small bowel obstruction, so we do not report that. But in the past medical history of the patient is HIV positive, that is Z21. The patient also has hypertension, the patient has diabetes, and the patient has hyperlipidemia. Let's find us like medications that support it, or things that we can tell, or things that we can find here that support those chronic conditions. And so far there's none. And now let's go to the next encounter. There's nothing in the assessment, so let's go back. The patient has a history of HIV. That is B20. And he's taking, the patient is taking HIV medication. So far, that's the only condition I saw. So far, yes, we only have one condition in this encounter. Okay, we are now onto our last encounter, and in the assessment it says gastroenteritis, and gastroenteritis is K52.9. That does not risk adjust, and also in the assessment it says no signs of SBO. So there's no reportable condition as far as what I can see here. Yep, that's it. Let's continue. I think that's the last encounter. And alright, we have another chart. It's a small chart. Let's make sure that the patient's name matches to the chart we are coding right now. I really don't like this type of chart format. This is very confusing to me. Good thing it is just a small one. And of course, I will not show you the chart format that I don't like because that's wrong and that is not allowed. Okay, now let's go to here. Let's look for conditions that risk adjust. There is alcohol abuse, there is colon cancer, pancreatitis, and COPD. But let's go first to the assessment. In the assessment, alcohol abuse and hypertension. So we can code hypertension, but not alcohol abuse because that does not risk adjust, but alcohol dependence does risk adjust. You can type abuse and then alcohol, and that will lead to a code of F10.10, which does not risk adjust. And also there is acute kidney injury, that is acute kidney failure, that is like N17.9, and we can report that. I don't see CKD, so there's no need for a combo code. So far I saw two conditions in the assessment. Let's go back. And yes, we can code J44.9, which is, what do you call that? COPD, colon cancer, and pancreatitis. We cannot code colon cancer because it's not in the assessment and there is no current treatment and it's not supported, so we do not code that one. Pancreatitis, I believe in this project we can only code chronic pancreatitis, but pancreatitis unspecified does not risk adjust. Okay, so far there are three conditions: I-10, essential hypertension, acute kidney failure, N17.9, and J44.9 for COPD. And now let's move on to the next encounter. I'm currently working on hospital charts, so I can code acute conditions found in the assessment. Okay, now let's go to the assessment. Here in the assessment, there is constipation, acute kidney injury, which is N17.9, hypertension, which is I-10, COPD, which is J44.9, atherosclerosis, and GERD. Let's type atherosclerosis. And the code for that is I-70.90, and that does not risk adjust. GERD does not risk adjust any longer for this date of service. And that's it. Let's go back a little bit up and find other conditions. Colon cancer in the HPI cannot be coded because there is no support or Current treatment. Alcohol abuse does not risk adjust. Pancreatitis does not risk adjust as well. Oh, the patient actually has diabetes. So we can code that. E11.9. Okay, the patient has E11.9 in the subjective part of the encounter. So we have 4 codes here: acute kidney failure, hypertension, COPD, and type 2 diabetes. And it's also mentioned here that the patient has had colon cancer in the past with colectomy, so it's already eradicated, so we cannot code that one. I guess that's it. All right, let's go and have our next chart. Okay, this is a small chart. It only has like 40 pages, so it will be quick. So here, let's go to the assessment first. In the assessment, it says syncope, and there's nothing else, but in the subjective part of the chart, there is seizure. The complaint of the patient is seizure, so we can code that R56.9. R56.9 is seizure compared to G40.909, which is seizure disorder. Seizure disorder is a chronic condition, while seizure is a non-chronic condition. So let's read more. And I don't see any other conditions right here. So we only have seizure, R56.9. Let's move on to the next encounter. Okay. So let's go to the assessment right away so that we can code confirmed diagnosis. Okay, it's altered mental status. There is no seizure. There is hallucination. Let's see if we can code hallucination, if it is reportable. Just type hallucination, and the code is R44.3, which does not risk adjust. The patient also is dehydrated. So dehydration, I believe, does not risk adjust, and the code for that is E86.0. And hypokalemia, I believe that does not risk adjust. You just type hypokalemia, and the code is E87.6, and again, it does not risk adjust. Let's find more. And the patient came for a seizure, but then for further evaluation, it is negative for seizure activity. And there are no other conditions present in this encounter that I can report right now. So yes, there's nothing else. We can proceed now to the next encounter. And my dog is drinking his water loudly, if you can hear that. Okay, the patient has medical history of migraine, that is G43909. The patient also had CVA or stroke. The patient also has ADHD. ADHD is F90.9, and that risk adjusts. And the patient also has seizure, that is R56.9. Okay, that's it. There's no other conditions. We have the migraine, G43.909. We have the ADHD, the F90.9, and we have the seizure, R56.9. Let's move on to the next encounter. Okay, Again, we can find the migraine, G43909. We have the ADD, F90.9, and we have, what else do we have here? Only have 2. But I want to make sure about if there is really a seizure in this encounter right here. Okay, we have a seizure, R56.9. Actually, we don't have seizure because there's a conflicting information here, so we do not call that seizure. Okay, that's it. Let's move on to the next encounter. I guess that's the last encounter. Oh, yes, that's the last one. Okay, now let's proceed to the next chart. Okay, let's go. I believe this is the last chart that we are gonna do because my camera is gonna die. So let's do this one. Let's make sure that the patient's name and the chart matches. Okay, here we go. Let's go first to the assessment. There is acute heart failure, so that is I50.9. There is also hypertension and CKD in the assessment. So for CKD and 18.9 because it's unspecified and that does not risk adjust, so we do not report that, but we can report the combo code, and that is I13.0 for hypertensive heart disease, hypertensive heart CKD with heart failure, stage 1 to 4 or unspecified, that is I13.0, and the heart failure is I50.9 since it is unspecified. So we code that, we report that. Now we'll go back up to see if we can find other conditions to be reported. Here we go. Okay, the patient has cardiomyopathy, and that is I42.9. And that just I42.9. The patient has hyperlipidemia, that is E78.5. The patient has PAD, peripheral artery disease, and that is I73.9. And what else? That's it. I don't see other conditions here. So we have we do not code differential diagnosis. So here we go. We have 5 conditions in this encounter. We have heart failure, hypertensive heart CKD with heart failure. We have cardiomyopathy, we have hyperlipidemia, and PVD. All right, let's move on to the next encounter. Let's go to the assessment right away to code those conditions that are confirmed. So here we have stage 3 chronic kidney disease, and that is N18.30. So we report that. Also, there is hypertension. We report that, I12.9 as a combo code for CKD and hypertension. Also, non-ischemic cardiomyopathy. So let's type cardiomyopathy, non-ischemic. I guess that is I42.8. Yeah, that is I42.8 for other cardiomyopathy. We also have, what else do we have here? We have PAD or the PVD, that is I73.9. That's it from the assessment. Let's go back up. There is heart failure, I50.9 in the past medical history. There is also hyperlipidemia in the past medical history. We can combo code the together with the I12.9. We can add to the combo code the heart failure, but we must find its support first before we can combo code it with other conditions. And so far, there is no support for the heart failure. So we do not combo code that with the other condition. The same as with the hyperlipidemia, I don't see other support because there is besides there is no medication there are no medications that support these conditions in this encounter. Okay, that's it. We have actually found 6 conditions: the CKD stage 3, the hypertensive CKD, I12.9, the cardiomyopathy, the PVD, the heart failure, and the hyperlipidemia. Now let's move on to our next encounter. Let's go directly to the assessment. So in the assessment, I see hypertension, CKD3, and chronic systolic heart failure. So those 3 can be combo coded. For that, that will be I13.0 for hypertensive heart CKD with heart failure. And then we also can code the CKD, that is N18.30. And we can also code the heart failure, which is specified as chronic systolic heart failure, which is I50.22. There is also PVD, that is I73.9. There is dyslipidemia, which is E78.5. Those are all found in the assessment. Let's continue. Oh, and that's it. There's no other conditions. So we found 5 conditions in the assessment that are reportable. Let me double check. And yes, that's it. Let's move on to our next encounter. Let's go to the assessment here. In the assessment, we have CKD, stage 3, and hypertensive heart failure, the hypertension and the heart failure. So we can combo code again the 3, but this time the heart failure is acute on chronic systolic heart failure. For that, the code is I50.23. That is acute on chronic systolic heart failure. We also have the stage 3 kidney disease, N18.30, and we also have the hypertensive CKD with heart failure, that is I13.0. Those 3, they risk adjust. We also have non-ischemic cardiomyopathy, and that is I42.8. And then what else do we have here? We have the PAD, I73.9. We have the hyperlipidemia, E78.5. So far, that's it. That's all I can find here in the assessment. Let's go up. And that's it. We can report all these 6 conditions. Now let's move on to the next one. In the assessment, we found the 3 conditions again: the heart failure, the hypertension, and the CKD. So by now you might know that that is I13.0, that is N18.30, and that is I50.23. Also we have cardiomyopathy, I42.8, we have PAD, I73.9, and we have dyslipidemia E78.5. And we can see angina here, and it is angina, the code for that is I20.9. Since we found angina here, I want to go back to my other encounters, just to make sure I did not miss the angina. Oh yeah, I missed angina on the previous encounter, so I'm going to add that here, I20.9. And I'm going to go back more and find, we need to really double check our work, and to make sure that we are reporting all the conditions that are reportable. Okay, not on that. Let's find the other one. Let's go back more. Okay, so I have missed one angina in previous encounter. Okay, we are now on our sixth encounter of this chart. Okay, so there is CKD, hyperlipidemia, and hypertension. So we can code I12.9 for that because we can combo code, but we cannot report the CKD because CKD unspecified does not risk adjust. And that's it. Is it really that's it, or we can find more encounters? I guess that's it. We are done on this chart, I believe. I'm just making sure we're not missing any. And yes, we have another encounter right here. Always, always, always double check your work to make sure that you are reporting everything. Okay, so in this chart, in this encounter, we have the only reportable condition is the hypertension, and that is I10. So that's it. Thank you guys for watching my code along with me today, and I will see you in my next one. Bye! And don't forget to join the fun giveaway. There will be another giveaway that will be uploaded this week, so watch out for that, and I will see you next time. Bye!